meeting tonight, May 3rd, 2021. We'll begin with the consent agenda. Any changes or corrections to the agenda? Okay. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, Don speaking. Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agenda for May 3rd, 2021.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. All right. Moving on, approval of minutes for the last meeting, April 5th, 2021. I understand there is one correction on members absent.
That was me. I was absent that day.
All right. Mr. Merriman was not here. Are there any other corrections or discussion over the agenda or the minutes from last meeting? Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes with the modification.
I move that we approve the minutes with the modification.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We approve the minutes from the last meeting with the addition of Mr. Don Merriman absent. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, motion carries. Item 2, review the goals and objectives as outlined in the Saline County Comprehensive Plan, Chapter 4, Section 1, General Land Use Policies. I'll turn it over to staff if you want to take us through that.
All righty. Mr. Chairman, this is staff-initiated review and amendment to the Saline County Comprehensive Plan currently enforced as adopted in 2008. State statute encourages annual review of the plan with full revision approximately every 7 to 10 years. Our current plan is 12 years old. Last year, the Planning Commission directed staff to begin updating the plan. The first item considered was in November when the Commission recommended approval of the incorporation of a new section within Chapter 4 addressing policies of the Fort Riley Unmanned Aircraft System Corridor Overlay. The next topics for consideration are the goals related to the general land use policies outlined in Section 1. And the way this Section 1 is basically governs states policies that are what I call day-to-day kind of operational type of functions that we do within the county that enable us to kind of enforce the zoning. It's kind of like the backbone type of goals that are outlined that we use that gives us basically just what we do on a daily basis. It empowers us to do what we do for the public on a daily basis in planning. The policies, this section establishes the basic development policies for specific growth areas, as well as preservation of rural lands outside of these growth areas. Because each policy has its origin in one or more of the recommendations outlined in Chapter 2 of this plan, the Commission will also have an opportunity to consider the relevancy of key planning issues as outlined in Chapter 2. The following, I've broken down Section 1 policies with relevant corresponding key planning issues found in Chapter 2. Because the majority of the policies from this section continue to be implemented, staff has determined that they are still relevant with some minor wording changes. Any tables or maps referenced will be examined at a future public hearing that will involve kind of like tweaking the specifics of different, like the land use map and that sort of thing. But this is just in general, gives staff direction and the Commission as well the direction to use specific tools that we currently enforce on a daily basis. What I would like to do before actually going over Chapter 4, if you want to, I can just briefly go over Chapter 2 and just briefly highlight some of the policies, because since that's where the origin of most of those policies for Chapter 4 come from, is from the recommendations in 2, and just to kind of refresh your memories, and
Okay.
to kind of like just to let you know how this is broken down and going forward. It starts in Chapter 2. So the key planning issues that were determined important for Saline County were preserving agricultural land. This would be the preservation of the county's agrarian heritage is a high priority for most residents. Though the motivations are quite varied, farmers and have the ability to continue farming without interference from non-farm residents. And that it goes on to explain basically plan recommendations, and I've outlined kind of like in my staff report that references these. These are the recommendations that I refer to, and I've given you the page number as well. The second item is the development review standards and processes. This is again one of those things that empowers staff to do what we do on a daily basis. This involves like commercial permit review that we have with the city, as well as floodplain administration and management, and any kind of daily permitting for like where to set everything from where to set your house for setbacks to where to how many structures to have per acre and that sort of thing that we have for density. The other item following that would be rural road system development and our funding, and the recommendations there are outlined as well. Avoiding natural hazards that would take into account the updating of things like our flood insurance rate maps and that sort of thing, making sure that they're enforced by staff and the county to the way that the state and FEMA Region 7 want us to enforce them. That type of, again, that type of goal usually just, it's a daily thing. It doesn't really change unless there's a change at the state level, where we're directed to change something. That's pretty straightforward. Protecting the Smoky Hill weapons range. This is one that's also very standard, in dealing with the Army. And we also have one of the goals, or one of the policies would be rural growth. This is a big one in terms of this is what sets our density standards, are making sure that we have like what we've established, the development rights and that sort of thing for each parcel many years ago, and so that's where this basically is just a continuation or kind of an affirmation of those types of policies to make sure that the rural areas are preserved, but also where there's opportunity to grow in areas like, let's say, commercial, non-ag type of uses. And this is where we get, basically policies for establishing rezonings and that sort of thing for commercial and industrial type uses in agricultural areas. And another would be for we've got providing for small city growth, and that's included under that rural provision, the rural growth. Balancing land resources and development needs. And another big one would be service provider coordination. This, again, is one that we do whenever we have like either a new plat or even a conditional use permit or rezoning, we always inform other agencies. A lot of times when you see my staff reports, or yeah, I'll say, are there, there's a section that I leave in my staff reports that says, it refers to other agencies' comments, and that's where this comes from. And there's other items like ensuring adequate water supply, that falls under there as well. Balancing private property rights with community interests, and some recommendations under there. But are there, before I move on to Chapter 4, are there any questions about any of these that you might have? Again, these are the things that have been determined to be of interest to Saline County back in 2008, and I guess in general what I would ask is, does this sound like, they still are relevant to you all? I think that from my standpoint, in terms of their wording, it's all still relevant. It's general and open-ended enough to where I think that we can continue to have each of those that are outlined and not really make any major changes to those.
Okay. Any comments or discussion from the commission?
You mentioned there may be some minor wording changes. Have you kind of determined where that needs to happen throughout the chapter?
I've gone over that in Chapter 4.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, and in the staff report, I've listed kind of where those changes might occur. Really, a lot of what I see in Chapter 4, Section 1, which is what we're going to go over tonight, it looks more like a redundancy issue, where there's look like areas that you can consolidate specific policies and word it so that it's not quite as where you have a repetitive kind of language where you'll say it'll mention something about floodplain management on one policy, and then it mentions floodplain management again on another policy, and I think that there's ways that we can combine those together. Okay. But what I've done is under Chapter 4, if you want to go on to the first page on Chapter 4, I wanted to kind of go over the planning goals that are outlined there on the first page. And they get their source again from Chapter 2. Their origins are from those recommendations that were outlined that I just went over. And the planning goals are agricultural preservation, population growth, economy, land use, natural resources, and public services, facilities, and utilities. And each of those, like as an example, agricultural preservation, to preserve agricultural land for its natural resources, economic and cultural value, for fiscal benefits, and for the contribution to the open character of the rural area. And so that's agricultural preservation. I think that's still relevant. That definition and goal would still be relevant unless you could think of anything else that I could add to that. But I think that pretty much sums up the goals that we have for making sure that there's agricultural preservation. Okay. For population growth, to provide an adequate supply of housing opportunities to accommodate projected growth needs and a sustainable choice of rural, suburban, small town, and urban lifestyles. Under economy, it's to provide an atmosphere attractive to existing and new businesses in industries that will strengthen the area economy through responsive partnerships. To this end, the county will support ongoing workforce development and training. Saline County seeks to foster economic growth that does not adversely affect the environment, either physically or aesthetically. Under land use, to provide for the healthy and attractive growth of the city of Salina and Saline County's smaller communities and designated rural residential areas while retaining the agricultural character of the balance of the county. Okay, under natural resources, to provide for the economical and sustainable use of Saline County's natural resources in an ecological and responsible manner. Under public services, facilities, and utilities, to efficiently provide for adequate public facilities and services that meet the demands from planned land uses at a minimal cost to residents, businesses, and the county. Do those goals sound pretty close to, something that we want to, like I say, they're all pretty much straightforward. I don't think that there's
Any
going to be
discussion from the commission on any of these? And transportation's the last one, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Any concerns or?
Transportation to promote and protect Saline County's varied regional transportation links, highways, airport, and railways, and to provide local citizens with an adequate, safe, and attractive road system at a minimal cost to residents, businesses, and the county. And with that, I will go ahead and just kind of explain under my staff report what I have written down in terms of potential changes in terms of consolidation that we might have for some of these. Under G1, which is the policy under Chapter 4, this is pages 15 to 19. G1 is, again, when I'm referencing the tables, like table G1 and all of these, or maps, these are specific maps and tables that we'll look at a future date. It's just, these are just basically day-to-day, like I say, the operations that refer to the maps that we use every day, and that's why use table G1 to determine which zoning districts are appropriate in each growth area. Staff feels that basically that's being implemented with no changes recommended, and it should continue as worded. Policy G2. Use the growth area maps 1 and 2, the primary rural road system map 3, and flood insurance rate map firms to guide land use and development decisions. These maps help identify areas where non-agricultural land uses should be located in the future. Zoning decisions in the urban service area around the city of Salina should be consistent with that city's adopted future land use map. Zoning decisions in community growth areas should be consistent with smaller communities' future land use plans. While the maps may indicate that a particular land use is appropriate, the county can also consider the adequacy of existing and funded road improvements as well as capacity of other affected systems, water utilities, schools, fire, etc., before granting any kind of zoning application. G2 is one of those where the corresponding planning issue was the development review standards and processes. And the comment that I have on that is implementation is ongoing. It can be consolidated with the G3, which is the next one I'm going to go over. And so G3 is maintain official growth map, primary rural road system, and flood insurance rate maps firm that are updated to include amendments as they occur. So My thought was, because it's referencing the maps and what we generally enforce on a daily basis for floodplain and roads and that sort of thing, that if we could combine that in some way with G2, because the wording is very similar. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Okay, would this be something as simple as just adding that verbiage to G2 that we maintain?
Yeah, to
Sorry,
make
maps?
it kind of blend in to where it's just a one, and then that way it would save that much more space on the paper as well, because a lot of this too, when I look to make things, consolidate this way, I also think in terms of the public, because this is being a public document. I want it to be as easy to understand for the public, to understand what our goals are and what how we operate. And this is the way that, the comprehensive plan is the way that the public sees, how we view the county and how we implement things through our land use policies, and just to make it as easy for the public to understand as well and follow along. And so,
I certainly agree with that. You try to make it as user-friendly as possible.
exactly.
Yeah,
For everybody,
Exactly.
I mean, not everybody are planners, so.
yeah, I agree.
But G4 is to ensure that development, rezoning, and subdivision approvals complies with all infrastructure standards provided in Table G2 before rezoning property or amending the land use plan. A check mark indicates that the facility of the improvement is required and is a condition of development. Infrastructure shall be considered available if any one of the following is true. Infrastructure is constructed and available for access, or B, infrastructure is privately funded and granted through an appropriate surety. Or C, infrastructure is funded for construction and scheduled for completion within 2 years. And it says, note, further discussion of road infrastructure improvements required is provided in Chapter 5, and we'll go over that at a future meeting. And for G4, that's, again, that goes back to development review standards, and rural growth are the two corresponding planning issues that gets their origin from. Implementation is ongoing and should be continued unchanged, I have. So if you agree, I can go ahead and move on. Okay, under G5, while Saline County encourages non-agricultural development to locate within cities and communities and/or their growth areas, as discussed in Policy G2, more intensive development of agricultural areas may be appropriate, subject to the following guidelines and principles. The proposed change is suitable for the site on which it is located. B, the proposed change is compatible with existing and planned development on adjacent properties. And C, the proposed change is suitable and benefits the citizens of Saline County. And Chapter 3, a vision of Saline County's future. For more information, and again, we can look that over as well. But under G5, though, that falls under preserving agricultural land, and I have should be continued unchanged. These are, again, as kind of an example of what we do on a daily basis. We have what they call the land evaluation survey assessment, or the LESA, as they call it, LESA system. And so before any kind of like rezoning, takes place or any kind of subdivision is proposed, staff will use that LESA LESA model to help you all in determining a recommendation of approval or denial. G6, provide adequate development potential for a variety of housing types required to meet the housing needs of present and future residents, and adopt standards for affordable housing requirements in each new subdivision. When evaluating need, the county should consider the availability of housing within incorporated communities. And that basically pertains to rural growth. I think it can be combined with, I'll read G16 real quick for you. G16 is use federal housing and urban development HUD standards to ensure that all housing units are safe and that the manufactured and median housing is compatible with site-built homes in the county. And so I think that could be combined back up there with, what I say, was G6. And because the similar wording. So, okay, under G7, consider adopting conservation subdivision regulations. Otherwise, do not allow rezoning and subdivision of property at densities that exceed those established in the applicable zoning district standards. Currently, that's 3 acres per living unit. And that could be actually combined with G7, consider, or G8 rather, limit residential development to densities greater than 1 unit per 3 acres to Salina's urban service area, community growth areas, and incorporated and unincorporated communities which have land zoned for such use and the necessary public utilities and services. So I was thinking combining basically 7 and 8. Mm-hmm. Under G9, the comprehensive plan shall be used to interpret the development regulations and make a determination as to the spirit and intent of the regulations. When the regulations are silent on a particular issue, comprehensive plan policy shall be used to provide the direction needed to make that determination. And that's under the corresponding issue of development review standards, and I'm not recommending any changes at this point for that. Under G10, allow commercial and industrial zoning districts in appropriate locations throughout the rural areas so as to provide for businesses that will meet local retail, service, and agricultural needs. And that pertains to rural growth. Could be combined with, if you read G14, and the wording there says to allow new industries to be sited in unincorporated areas under the following conditions. The area has access to paved roads. B, adequate water and wastewater facilities are provided to serve the proposed industrial use, including provision for water and fire suppression. And C, proposed development will not be incompatible with existing agricultural development. And so, like I say, I feel like that could be combined as well. G11, direct more intensive commercial development serving regional commercial needs to interstate highway interchanges and existing cities having areas zoned and served for such development. That, again, could be probably combined with the following, the one after that on G12, which is direct highway-oriented businesses to locate in close proximity within a half mile to the intersections of state highways with paved roads. You see where I'm kind of getting with where the combinations come. The wording is very similar.
Bit of an overlap, yeah.
Yeah. Under policy G13, allow existing industrial uses to be maintained, expanded, and/or redeveloped. No change recommended. It should be continued as currently worded. G15, support economic development efforts of Salina and other communities, excuse me. And that has its origins under the rural growth concerns. And currently the county does support economic development with Salina and other communities. This should be continued unchanged. G16, the federal housing and urban development HUD standards to ensure housing units are safe. That's the one that I mentioned should be combined with G6. And G17, ensure that manufactured home parks are located and designed to provide for adequate safety and accessibility for residents and public service providers through the conditional use permit process, which is what we currently enforce.
What's your comment there to mention the MHP development standards?
Yeah, I put that down as a way of letting, it's just an idea I had of, we currently have a requirement for conditional uses, but we might want to at some point have standards that reflect, like let's say, like if you have 4 manufactured home parks, there are some counties that will adopt separate provisions for manufactured home parks because they're considered kind of a special use, special type of use, and the standards for like setbacks and things like that. Those are things that, you know, and there's allocating certain space for like recreational areas and that sort of thing. We have provisions for manufactured housing, but we may want to look at probably, you know, kind of beefing up those standards a little bit, possibly, in the event that there's like, our zoning regulations do say that it has to go through a CUP, but, do we want to probably put in there some very, kind of generic, basic standards for that type of use, that would regulate like the setbacks between units? Because I know we had, when I was in another county, we had like a 10-foot, for fire safety, we had a 10-foot minimum between units for those manufactured homes in those MHPs. And so I didn't know if that was something that we would want to kind of investigate later on. And so I was just curious, would you want me to go ahead and put that language in there about putting, being more specific with
Well, Tim, you'd also have an issue with septic systems too.
Sure.
You have to have a big enough piece of property to handle or put a septic system on. And
Yes.
as those septic systems age, that's kind of what happened in Kip. It's the reason we have a sewer district down there. Is, if you don't have enough land, then what do you do?
Oh, exactly.
So,
And I know when I was in I don't mean to say, I was in Finney County years and years ago, and they ran into a problem where you had these kind of postage stamp type manufactured home parks that were on like maybe 2 acres, and they crammed like 15 trailers on there, and you go through, you wear your sewer system out pretty quick, within a few years, and so yeah, I mean that's definitely.
Are there some existing state recommendations or standards that we could adopt for this, or is it something we'd have to come up with?
I think that the state leaves it up to individual counties as far as the standards themselves. I know Dickinson County, we started that process before I got there, and it was never. I think that they put it. Our planning commission there shelved ours until if we update our plan. So that's why that kind of gave me the idea of, well, if we're gonna, when this plan came up for revising, I thought, well, maybe it would be a good idea for Saline County to look at it too. So.
Okay.
So the options that you would have that I've got down for you would be to either direct staff to revise the land use policies and as proposed in the above comments, or make no changes at this time.
Okay. Was there any discussion from the commission on any of these that we reviewed?
I have a question. Does agritourism fall into something under a CUP, or would that be something involved in one of these policies, commercial, industrial, that kind of thing?
Agritourism would probably fall under the, as far as the goals would be for economic goal. But it's the way the process to do that would be to go through, right now would be a conditional use permit.
Okay.
So.
All right.
You feel like that would be covered on one of our existing ones already, though, for
Yes.
economic development?
Yes.
Okay. The policy G13, could that be combined as well into the industrial and commercial zoning districts and new industries with 10 and 14? I don't know if we want to, or does it benefit us as a county to keep that separate?
I thought of that after I had done this, but it's because it was referring to existing. I didn't know if that would
That's
be.
my question. Is it, since
Yeah.
we're existing, do we want to keep that separated?
Because the other two were mentioning basically new
Yeah, new development.
new industries and new development.
Opportunities.
We could. I mean, it's just a matter of I could wordsmith it.
Just reading it, it just kind of stuck out. I don't know if that's, I don't want to add it in there and then create more of a challenge later if we have an existing business that wants to expand, and now we have to look at the new and existing type policies.
Yeah, it's up to you all. I said it could go either way. I just left it out because the wording was such that it had to do with existing versus new, and I didn't know if that was a problem for you all.
If there's any thoughts from the commission on?
I could see where they could fit in by combining, as long as maybe existing was underlined or something. So,
Yeah.
so they're alleviating a kind of confusion to somebody looking at new, and then they see this other piece in there and they don't realize.
Yeah, or at least put it together so we can see that all,
see.
here's the policy covering industrial and commercial development.
Yeah, I could say existing or proposed. That's how I'd do it. I could probably just say proposed or existing industrial could be encouraged, that kind of thing. I find a way I could wordsmith it in.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions for staff?
And just to let you know, it's when we get further into this, so like when we get into like the sections on land use and the more specific areas on like economic development and that kind of thing, and the growth areas, you'll have a lot more to look at. You'll have a whole lot more to go through, and I'll probably even, because of the COVID situation, I've been thinking one of the alternatives I have is I could send out surveys to like, you know, the businesses and that sort of thing, and residents, and get feedback that way. I can probably reach out to, you know, Chambers of Commerce and Economic Development Corporation and all that, and get ideas from them as well, and probably invite them over here to kind of
Yeah.
sit in.
Because there really haven't been any updates to the maps at all since this original, have they?
No. In fact, I don't think we've even, I mean, even though we've got a zoning map that's actually in here, we finally, I think I just recently had our GIS department put up a map online that's available for people to see, and it's been updated, so
Okay.
that can be reflected in here as well, but we can go over that again, like I say, when we go over the maps and any of the tables and things, the specifics. But,
Okay. All right.
so I'll go ahead and proceed with, you all directed me just to go ahead and
Yeah.
do.
Any concern that we direct staff to continue and proceed in this direction?
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, do we need a motion for that, or just?
Please, please.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move we instruct the staff to go ahead and revise these policies and combine, as we discussed, combining with the addition of adding policy G13, combining them with 10 and 14.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we direct staff to continue in this direction to revise the policies, combining the ones as indicated with the addition of policy G13 with G10 and G14. All in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Any other items for us, staff?
Any announcements or anything? I think that's it.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I think Dwayne should do it. He hasn't been here enough. It should be
Second.
him.
His turn. All right, it's been moved and seconded, we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned.